The path to the happiest version of yourself will not necessarily be linear, so it's very important that you allow yourself to be surprised. Like, I feel like when we go online, we either see two sides that are both extreme, right? Either you see people who are saying, oh, believe in manifestation, don't worry about how things get done, just like hope for the best and do your affirmations and do like literally no work and then everything will work out. And then on the other side of it, which honestly, that is very woo-woo vibes, but like I don't fully negate it. And then there's the other side of it, which I also don't negate, but the other side of it is like, this is the way to plan for 2026. This is how you make the perfect vision board that actually works. This is how you write out in detail your 10-year, 5-year, 1 year, 1 quarter, 1 month, 1 day plan. Like, and you get down to every single detail so you understand the action you're taking in every single second. And that's how the plan will manifest, is because you literally planned it out to every minutia. And I feel like there has to be kind of like a happy in between where you're trusting the process, but you're also not delusional to think that like you can just trust and not develop a process, right? Because I feel like with manifestation, it's all about the trusting part. And then on the other side of things, it's too much about the process. And because you're so obsessed with the process, you're so obsessed with the 10-point plan going exactly the way you envisioned it, going in the exact order that you envisioned it, requiring the exact amount of effort and preparation that you envision. Because you're so obsessed with the process, you don't allow things to kind of evolve and like in a natural way. You don't allow things to breathe. Like you don't let the tea steep, right? You dip the tea in, you dunk it, you pull it out and you're like, I'm ready to drink it. And like you want things to be very prescribed, but sometimes it's like the tea is richer when you give it a second, right? So you prepare to take action. You build in the habits you want to develop over time, kind of one by one, stacking them in. And you have an overall process that, yes, you're aligned to, but at the same time, you let it breathe, you let it steep so that the flavor can emerge, so that you leave space for like the whimsy, you leave space for the trust, you leave space for trusting God, you leave space for trusting the universe to bring you what you want, right? But part of that means putting yourself into a process, being committed to a process, but not being so committed that you don't allow it to evolve and take its own direction. And the reason this kind of came to mind tonight as I filmed this episode is that today was a very, very exciting day for me at work. And I won't talk about like everything that happened today, but like as a very small example, right? I have always wanted since I was a kid to have a business card. It's something I've always wanted. And it's funny, like as I've gotten into like adulthood and I've gone to college and I used to have this like Obby's one-stop beauty shop. Anytime I had my little like personal ventures, I always thought this is a perfect time to have a business card, like so I can let people know I do makeup and hair and nails. And even when I was a kid, like on the playground at like 8 years old, I used to like sell portraits for $4 a pop, which in Australia is like 2 shiny gold coins, and I'd use them to buy ramen at the cafeteria or the canteen, I think they called it, right? And so I've always been like a little girl that's like wanted to have her own business or do her own thing or whatever it is, but just like I've always loved the idea of a business card. I always thought it was so chic, so professional, and I always just looked forward to the day of having one. And today at work, like I didn't even like necessarily ask for one, but the powers that be were like, yeah, she needs one because I'm about to enter like a much more client-facing role and, you know, travel and represent the business. And so for me, like that's a very exciting day, and that's really just the half of it, but it was a very exciting day, right? And that in kind of combination of some of the other things that went on made me realize like the result of what happened today in totality addressed so many of the things I desired like towards the last quarter, like in the last quarter of last year. Like I feel like towards the end of last year, I was really spinning my wheels on how I could achieve certain goals financially and how I could kind of, like I said in a previous episode, I feel like I'm like, 90% of the way there to a life that I like love. Like I already love my life, obviously, but I feel like there's like a 10% that like I want to push myself so that it's like I'm not just like settling for, you know, mediocre, but like I'm really pushing myself to the life of my dreams, you know? And I know I'll be happy either way because gratitude is central. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, like I think it's good to be ambitious. And at the end of last year, there were so many ways, like I was brainstorming all these different things I could do. And I think it's good, like to have, like, especially if you have a safety net, you have parents that are willing to help you, or just if you have a safety net of any kind, I think it's so good to literally throw paint at the wall and see what beautiful creation shows up on your canvas, like what emerges over time, right? Like I said, trusting the process, like you try things, you dip the paintbrush in the paint, you apply a stroke, you apply another stroke, you try a different color, you try a different combination, and you let the picture emerge over time. Sometimes you leave it alone, you don't touch anything, you don't change anything, but every now and then you come back and look at the canvas and you reassess, like, am I happy with this? But you keep trusting the process, but leaving space for that whimsy and wonder, leaving space for things to evolve. But I think what's really, really cool about that, what's cool about having that perfect balance between the trust and the process, when you're trusting the process, the having that perfect balance of like creating that abstraction or creating that painting where you don't really know what happens at the end. That would happen with me a lot when I started making abstract art. Like I never knew what I was making at the end. I just knew what, was central to the piece, and I knew what process I wanted to explore. And I allowed those decisions to happen naturally. I allowed myself to respond to whatever had already happened. I allowed myself to respond to whatever I was looking at, and I let the piece evolve. But I think what's so cool about this approach, right, with my art, with myself, with my career, is that one day, because you don't know what you're like expecting necessarily, because not everything is prescribed, right? Because you're not obsessively like everything has to go a certain way, right? One day you apply one last brushstroke, and then you take a few steps back and you look at the piece and you're like, it's done. Like, it's done. So for so long, you didn't know what you were waiting for necessarily. You didn't know what you were making. You didn't know where you were going with it. You had an overall idea. You had not even really an idea, but you had a process, right? But you weren't prescriptive. You weren't too tied down. And before you knew it, you step back and realize that it's finished. And the thing that you wanted, which was, a final piece that resonates with you in some way, has actually transpired. And today was one of those days for me where it was like, towards the end of last year, I was spinning my wheels on how to achieve a certain goal. And I was throwing paint at the wall and throwing paint at the wall and throwing paint at the wall. But again, because I was getting so obsessive on processes and trying to map things out and trying to like create daily plans and create, monthly goals. And I was so like, I want to know how to work out if I try it this way and try it that way. And though I was allowing myself to try a lot of different processes, again, they were very like, okay, I'll get to this result if I do it this way. But what I found was when I kind of let go of that, probably in the last month, and I just said, you know what? This is the process I'm really, really down for. This is what I want to commit to. This is what I'm excited about. I'm going to let it take shape. I'm just going to put in the work to this. I'm going to let that take shape. I'm going to let it breathe. I'm going to let the tea bag steep. And now the tea is done, okay? It's still piping hot, and there's still more to explore, right? Maybe next I'll make biscuits to go with my tea. Like, my career can always evolve. This is just the beginning. But it was really exciting to like take a sip and it's tasty, and like to have results and to have, milestones get hit that I thought had to be hit in a certain way with a certain level of effort for me that would be put into certain areas of my life. But really, by focusing on a totally different area of my life, I got the exact same outcome, and actually way better outcomes than I had originally thought were possible. And they were delivered literally so instantly. And I feel like it's so interesting how quickly life can change. And I think that's why I also encourage you to think this way, where it's like, when you realize how quickly your life can change, how things can change overnight, if you're willing to just like lock in for 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, whatever the healing path journey looks like for you. Maybe it's not linear, but it's so funny because it might seem like you're a duck paddling, right? And your feet are just like paddling. Nothing's happening on the surface. But then all of a sudden, I don't know how the duck analogy still translates here, but before you know it, it's like you arrive, right? And so it feels like you're going nowhere for so long, or you're lost in the middle of the ocean. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I see the horizon. Like I see the shore. Like I'm saved. Like I've arrived. And so I just think that's such a beautiful part of the process. It's a beautiful part of the artistic process for me when I'm making art. I think it's a beautiful part of the creative process as us as human beings, as creators, right? Because we are creators of our own lives, right? And same thing with career. It's so beautiful. Just apply to anything, really. It's so beautiful to just try your best and to be consistent. No matter what you do, right? Be consistent. Even if you switch it up or try different things or whatever, just consistently try. Don't give up. Because before you know it, it can seem like you are lost forever. It can seem like you're not going anywhere. It can seem like I literally have no idea what's going on. And then you blink and suddenly it's like, I got this thing that I wanted. 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 Literally within the same 12-hour day or whenever this day started, right? All of it within the same day. All of these things transpired that none of them I prompted. And all of them addressed the things I originally wanted just a few months ago that I did not think would transpire in this particular way. So anyways, that was on my heart today, so I wanted to share it with you guys. As always, thank you so much for listening. In the description of this episode, if you hit that link, you'll find all of the other ways to listen to me or read my work. If you enjoy my words, you might enjoy them in written form, which you can find on Substack. But just by clicking the link for Live Lumani letters, you can subscribe to the newsletter and it'll be delivered to your email inbox. So you don't need a Substack account to receive my writing. But if you do have a Substack, I write things other than just the letters that go out weekly. So definitely check me out. I'm Live Lumani on all other socials. Sometimes I post clips from this podcast and just other things. As always, thank you for being here. Welcome to Live Lumani. My name is Abiamudo, and I hope you'll stay a while. These episodes are quite short, actually. I guess it's funny when I listen to podcasts, they are really, really long, but they don't feel that way. But I can only imagine if you're listening to this, it's girl, you're done talking already? Get in the studio. So if you enjoyed this episode, I highly encourage you to, listen to or binge the other ones. They're all like this, just bite-sized little things I thought of in the middle of the night that were on my heart that I needed to kind of tell myself or take a moment to pause and embrace in my own life or address in my own thoughts. And I thought I would share them with you. And also, I really encourage you to follow the podcast. If you've been enjoying it or you like this episode, you can also rate it. Share it with a friend that you think would enjoy this, because if you like this podcast, I'm sure the people you know are on a similar wavelength. And I really want this to be our community of like-minded people. So, feel free to drop a comment, introduce yourself. Let me know what you think about this episode or any other episode. If you have ideas of what you want me to talk about, feel free to let me know. That's all for me, these outros. I feel because I don't do an intro, I'm what am I supposed to say again? At my outros. But yeah, that's all for me. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time. Mwah.